Thank you for joining Pioneer. I'm Chris with Norman Public Library Central, and this is our series on the Swift computer programming language. In our previous lesson, we learned how to do exception handling, how to use a try and a do catch block to handle exceptions, or in some cases, to choose not to handle exceptions within our code. If we choose not to handle an exception in our code, we mark our function with the throws keyword, which then tells external code, like our main code in this particular case, that we don't handle the exception in our code and that the calling code is responsible for handling it instead. I left you with a challenge, and that challenge was to add exception handling to your own code that was getting your forecast. Here's what mine looks like. I've removed the exclamation mark or the question mark from the word try on line 39 and added a do catch block. My catch block prints out the localized description. If you run this code with a valid URL, you will receive a response from the National Weather Service that looks like this. This response is in a data format called JSON, that is JavaScript Object Notation. And today I'd like to show you one way that we can handle that data in Swift and begin parsing it to produce a nicer looking weather forecast. If you paste your URL into a web browser, you might see a response that looks something like this. An open curly brace followed by something in double quotes, and a colon followed by a square bracket followed by something in double quotes, and maybe a comma and a curly brace and something in quotes, and a colon and something in quotes and a comma. This is the JSON format. If you paste this into a web browser that understands the JSON format, you may get a slightly nicer display like this display in Firefox. The JSON format is returning what's called a dictionary. We'll learn more about how to parse the dictionary in our next lesson. However, in this lesson, let's look at how we can get the JSON response out of the raw data that's being sent to us by the National Weather Service. I'll begin with lesson 14-json.swift, available on the Pioneer Library System website. This is the code that is attempting to find our weather station and grid location information. In this code, we receive points response, which when we print out on line 43 we see is a JSON object. We'd like to begin by deserializing that JSON, which means take the JSON data and convert it into a structure that the computer actually understands. I'll begin by deleting this print response. We'll create a new variable called JSON dictionary. And we're going to set it equal to a JSON serialization object. There are two main ways of interpreting JSON in Swift. The serialization option will give us a bare dictionary without trying to understand what the contents of the dictionary are, and that's what we want for now. The JSON serialization class has a function called JSON object. And in particular, we're looking for the option that says JSON object with data, the first one in the list. So I'll choose to create a JSON object with data. We now need to fill in our data. Our data came from points response. But points response is not a data object. Points response is a string object that we must convert to a data object. So I need to choose points response.data using string encoding. We must tell the computer how to interpret that string. And in our particular case, the string encoding we'll use is .utf8. We have options available to us for JSON serialization here in JSON serialization.reading options. We don't need to provide any special options, so I'll put an open and close square bracket. Swift is reminding me that data is giving me an optional, whereas JSON object expects data to be a real non-optional data type. In this particular case, we'll force unwrap. Swift is now reminding me that JSON serialization might fail. So we'll add the keyword try. Both of these try statements are handled by our single do catch statement. So unlike with an optional where we had to add a guard statement for every single possible failure, with our exception handling we can have one block of exception handling code even though multiple lines of code might create exceptions. Finally, for now, let's print our JSON dictionary. Don't forget to update your main.swift file to run lesson14.json. We can see that we're actually getting the same printout that we got before. That's actually good because this tells me that we successfully created a JSON dictionary and we're now ready to begin parsing it. Your challenge is now to add JSON deserialization to your own code so that you can properly interpret the response of your forecast from the National Weather Service. We'll cover how to parse the dictionary in our next lesson. Good luck!